Imagine the year 2034, a chilling picture unfolds where the United States and China, two of the world's superpowers, are entangled in escalating military confrontations, culminating in a harrowing tactical nuclear warfare. The tension doesn't stop there. Other nations like Russia, Iran, and India are pulled into the fray, edging the world dangerously close to the precipice of World War III. This isn't a prediction, but a gripping narrative from 2034, a novel of the next World War. Co-authored by Admiral James Stavrakis, a former Supreme Allied Commander at NATO, and Elliot Ackerman, this speculative fiction offers a haunting gaze into a potential future. Throughout history, when an emerging power has posed a threat to an established one, war has often ensued. However, there are significant deviations from this pattern. The likelihood of a war between the US and China in today's context is no more predestined than a clash between the ascending US and the waning British Empire was 100 years ago. In recent times, the meetings between China and the US have reignited discussions. The question on everyone's mind: can these two colossal powers, one on the rise and the other well established, navigate the course of history without succumbing to conflict? Prominent media outlets, like Xinhua, have expressed optimism, suggesting that the so-called Thucydides trap can be sidestepped. A prevalent reason for this hope? Their intertwined economic ties. However, one must ask, is this line of thought foolproof? History paints a different picture. Take, for instance, World War I. Britain and Germany, despite being key trade allies, found themselves on opposing sides of the battlefield. Moreover, while trade often establishes influential proponents of peace, it can also become a source of tension. Japan's past reliance on US and British colonies for oil triggered its choice for war against them. And today, perceptions of China's trade practices have fueled unrest in significant sections of the US political arena. While close trade relationships may elevate the economic implications of a potential war, the sheer gravity of any major power conflict overshadows these considerations. In the grand scheme of geopolitics, temporary trade losses may pale in comparison to broader strategic interests. Amidst the shifting sands of global geopolitics, the relationship between the US and China stands out as a focal point of interest. While history is laden with tales of great powers clashing, there are heartening arguments that hint at a hopeful path, one where these two mighty nations can coexist peacefully. In today's discussion, we'll outline the reasons that both strengthen our belief and make us optimistic about the US and China leaning towards diplomacy and collaboration, rather than gravitating towards conflict and war. Primarily, a military confrontation between the two nations risks escalating to a nuclear level. This places the US in a similar position as it once held concerning the Soviet Union. In this era, Taiwan might play the role that the Fulda Gap did in Germany during the Cold War. However, the mutually assured destruction principle that deterred major US-Soviet confrontations still holds for the US and China. Furthermore, the global community would pull out all the stops to prevent such a nuclear conflict, given its instant, far-reaching, and devastating consequences, offering a stark contrast to slower emergencies like climate change. The sheer possession of nuclear weapons by both the US and China stands as a compelling deterrent against any direct confrontation, even as their competitive spirits soar. The essence is that wars are often extensions of political objectives. However, when nuclear weapons are in play, pursuing those objectives through warfare becomes untenable. It's not just about the sheer magnitude of destruction nuclear weapons bring. While they are incredibly destructive, human history itself isn't devoid of total decimation in conflicts, especially in nomadic cultures where vanquishing the opponent entirely was sometimes deemed economical. The unique nature of nuclear weapons lies not just in their ability to annihilate, but in the assurance and immediacy of that destruction. Leaders might overestimate their chances in a conventional war due to various factors, be it morale, strategy, or even environmental conditions. However, when nuclear weapons come into play, all those variables become irrelevant. The defining characteristic of nuclear conflict is its decisiveness. No actual battlefield victory is required to obliterate an adversary. Furthermore, in the face of a full-scale nuclear assault, defense mechanisms are virtually non-existent. Every leader understands this reality, knowing well that a significant part of their nation could be wiped out in a brief span should total conflict ensue. Given that no policy objective justifies such an immense sacrifice, the primary catalyst for a full-blown conflict would likely be some form of miscalculation. Many of these potential missteps can, and should, be addressed through consistent high-level dialogues between Chinese and US leaders. Historically, China is known for its strategic patience and long-term planning. Even with its rapidly expanding military capabilities, China remains behind the US in several critical areas of military strength. While China is channeling significant resources into developing asymmetric countermeasures, like advanced long-range missiles and military-grade cyber technologies, it's unlikely to rival the US in traditional military assets like aircraft and large vessels anytime soon. Engaging in direct combat with the US would currently be too perilous for China. Should such a confrontation arise, China might be compelled to resort to its nuclear arsenal. Given this context, it's less plausible that China would intentionally instigate a military clash with the US. Nevertheless, the US defense establishment tends to prepare for the most severe outcomes, and its current emphasis is on the possibility of a direct confrontation with China.
I hope that war doesn't come, but if it comes, we're going to do our part.
This strategic outlook, however, might make the US vulnerable to unforeseen challenges. History since the Korean War has shown that asymmetric threats often pose the most significant challenges to national security. Preparing primarily for the most dire of confrontations doesn't ensure readiness for the entire range of potential conflicts. Geography plays an often underestimated role in reducing the likelihood of a US-China conflict, rivaling even the significance of nuclear deterrence. This fact stands in contrast to past scenarios where shifts in power dynamics led to conflicts. In Europe, from where many historical examples are drawn, each nation had a genuine fear that a rival could grow powerful enough to pose a direct threat to its existence. This is not a concern shared by the US or China. Such vastness and inherent security from invasion reduce the overarching tension between them. Furthermore, the Pacific Ocean provides a vast natural barrier between China and the US, further dampening threat perceptions. Many historical instances of violent power shifts, from the days of Sparta and Athens and even within Europe, involve states in close geographic proximity. In contrast, peaceful transitions in global power, like that between the US and the UK, or the non-violent culmination of the Cold War, involve nations separated by significant distances. The rationale is straightforward. The challenge of asserting dominance across vast expanses, especially oceans, diminishes each nation's fears that the other could jeopardize its core interests or very existence. Another reason suggesting a possible avoidance of a Sino-US clash lies in China's emerging dominance as a global soft power. Despite controversies surrounding the origins of COVID-19, China appears to have navigated the pandemic more effectively than the US. Furthermore, China's Belt and Road Initiative, which finances global infrastructure projects, has assertively filled the vacuum created by the US's withdrawal during Donald Trump's presidency. Given these strategic successes, China's leadership might deem their current trajectory to be advantageous. Certainly, even the most logical strategies can be derailed by unforeseen events and their ripple effects. A mere miscommunication has the potential to amplify a localized conflict into a broader interstate showdown. The US's engagements in places like Afghanistan and Iraq serve as reminders that interventions in conflicted regions can be fraught with challenges. Concurrently, China has been increasingly proactive on the global stage. Its assertive territorial ambitions, coupled with an expanding foreign aid agenda and surging domestic nationalism, might push China towards foreign actions that could inadvertently challenge US interests. A simple mistake by either country could have huge consequences, highlighting how important diplomacy is. Both nations need to clearly state what's most important to them in their relationship, and try to see things from the other's point of view. While it may be a bitter pill to swallow, certain issues like civil rights within China might not fall within the core US interests. Conversely, China should recognize the deep-rooted US interests in regions like Taiwan. While clashes of various natures between the US and China seem inevitable, a direct military confrontation can and should be avoided. If you found value in today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Drop a comment saying subscribed, and I promise to respond to each one of our viewers. Thank you for tuning in.